Welcome to Sales Comp Decoded. This is the show where we talk about the stories behind how companies pay people to sell. I am Abimbola. In our last episode, we talked about the promise hidden inside every commission plan. We looked at how a pay plan is not just a formula, it is a business promise. And both the company and the seller need to understand that promise in the same way. Today, we are looking at one of the ways that promise quietly breaks. We're talking about what happens when the job changes, but the pay plan does not change with it. At first, the problem may not look serious. The job title may be the same. The person may still sit in the same team. The managers may still run the same meetings, and the compensation plan may still pay out as usual. But underneath the surface, the actual work may have started to change. And when the business keeps paying for the old version of the job while asking people to deliver a new version, the issue becomes more than a compensation problem. It becomes a clarity and fairness problem. And if it continues for long enough, it can become a talent problem too. There is a quiet pattern that happens in many sales organizations. A company hires someone for one kind of role, but over time, the business changes around them. The product becomes more complex. Customers expect more support. Growth from existing customers becomes more important. Retention starts to matter more. Margin becomes more visible. Collaboration with other teams becomes necessary, and suddenly, the role that was once simple has become broader, heavier, and more difficult to explain. The job has changed, but nobody has formally said this is now a different job. That is where the tension begins. A seller who was first hired to win new customers may now be expected to manage relationships after the first sale. A customer success person who was once focused mainly on renewal may now be expected to support expansion. A sales manager who once focused mostly on tracking numbers may now be expected to coach behavior, improve forecasting, and help the team sell in a more disciplined way. In each case, the work has moved, but the pay plan often stays attached to the old role. And this is where people begin to fill the gap. They may not explain it in technical language. They may simply say, I am being asked to do more, but the plan has not changed. Or leadership says this matters, but it does not affect my pay. Or if I spend time on this new work, I lose time on what actually helps me. Those comments should not be dismissed as complaints. They are often early signs that the role and the reward system are no longer moving together. Let us make this practical. Imagine a company in its earlier growth stage. The business needs new customer, so the account executive role is built around new business. The company wants people who can create opportunities, move quickly, handle rejection, and close deals. The pay plan is designed for that world. It rewards new customer revenue. It gives strong upside when sellers exceed targets. The message is clear. Go out, win new business, and you'll be rewarded. For that stage of the business, the plan may be exactly right. But then a few years pass. The company now has a larger customer base. Growth is no longer only about bringing in new customers. Existing customers are becoming more important. Leadership wants better retention, stronger expansion, healthier customer relationships, and revenue that can last beyond the first contract. So, the same sellers are now asked to behave differently. They are still expected to win business, but they are also expected to think about customer fits, long-term value, handover quality, expansion potential, and whether the customer can actually succeed after the contract is signed. That is not just a small adjustment, it is a different version of the job. But if the compensation plan still rewards mostly the first sale, the plan continues to speak the language of the old role. It tells the seller that closing is still the most important, valuable moment, gives more weight to speed than quality, and rewards the visible deal more than the customer outcome that follows. Then leadership becomes frustrated. Leaders want seller to think more strategically, work better with customer success, bring in higher quality revenue. But the seller is receiving two messages at the same time. The rule says think long term, while the plan says close the deal. And when those two messages compete, the plan usually wins. That does not make the seller selfish, it makes them rational. People respond to the system they are given, especially when that system affects their income. This is why role clarity has to come before plan design. A company cannot design a strong compensation plan for a role it has not clearly defined. That may sound obvious, but many businesses skip this step because the job title has not changed. The person is still called an account executive, a customer success manager, a sales manager, or a channel manager. So the business assumes the role is still the same. But titles can stay the same while the work underneath them changes. A role may begin as pure new customer acquisition and slowly become a mixture of acquisition and expansion. A role may begin as simple product selling and later become more advisory. A role may begin as individual selling and later depend much more on collaboration with technical specialists, customer success, finance, legal, or partners. When that happens, the company has to pause and ask whether the pay plan still fits the work. If the answer is no, the plan may still pay people correctly according to its rules, but it may no longer pay them for what the business actually needs them to do. That is when frustration begins. One person may continue doing the new work because they are professional and committed, even though they know it costs them time. Another person may focus only on the work that triggers commission, even when that work is no longer the most important thing for the customer or the company. Neither outcome is good. In the first case, frustration builds because the person feels the company has expanded the role without recognizing the change. In the second, misalignment grows because the person is following the plan rather than the new business reality. The uncomfortable truth is that both people may be behaving reasonable. The problem is that the incentives are describing a different job. Sales leaders can easily miss this problem because role drifts rarely arrives as a big announcement. On paper, the organization still looks familiar. The same title appear in the structure. The same people attend the same meetings. The same plan may still calculate payout on time. So everything appears stable. But inside the role, the work may have become heavier and more complex. The seller may now be managing more stakeholders, supporting customer adoption, improving data quality, protecting margins, influencing renewals, or working with teams that were not central to the role before. When the plan does not recognize any of that, people eventually start asking whether the company understands what the role has become. That question is dangerous because once people feel that the plan no longer reflects the work, they begin to separate what the company says from what the company rewards. And that is where trust weakens. There is another cost that leaders sometimes underestimate. When the job changes, but the pay does not, strong people may leave. The best sellers are often very thoughtful about compensation. They do not only look at the salary or their total earning opportunity. They look at how the plan works. They ask whether the target is realistic, whether the upside is meaningful, whether the measures match the role, and whether the plan gives them a fair chance to earn by doing the job well. So, when a strong performance realizes that the plan does not fit the job they are actually doing, they have choices. They can raise the issue, they can tolerate the misalignment for a while, or they can look for another company where the role and the pay plan make more sense together. Often, the people most likely to leave are the ones with the strongest market options. That does not make them difficult. It means they can find a place where the work they are being asked to do is also the work the plan recognizes and rewards. The irony is that when they leave, the reason may not show up as a compensation issue. It may be recorded as career growth, a better opportunity, or a more suitable role. Those reasons may be true, but underneath them, there may be a quieter story. The person felt they were doing one job while being paid for another. At first, the signs may be small. A team that used to perform well begin to cluster below targets. Managers may keep receiving the same questions about priorities. Customers' outcomes may weaken because the company wins deals but struggle to retain or expand them. Morale may decline because people feel the plan no longer reflects the reality of the work. Sometimes, the clearest signal comes late when someone valuable resigns. By then, the company may be reacting to the symptom instead of the cause. This is why every plan review should include a role review. Before asking whether the commission rate is right, the business should ask whether the role is still the same role the plan was designed for. That question can feel uncomfortable because it forces leaders to name what has changed. Maybe the sales cycle has become longer or the customer journey has become more complex. Maybe expansion is now more important than new customer acquisition. Maybe the role now requires more collaboration, judgment, or customer ownership than the current measure recognizes. These are not small questions. They go to the heart of whether the compensation plan still describes the job. Designing for the role as it exists now. Once the role is clear, the plan becomes easier to design. If the role is mainly about winning new customers, the plan can reward urgency and new business clearly. If the role is mainly about growing existing customers, the plan should reflect relationship depth, expansion quality, and customer continuity. If the person influences outcomes through others, the plan should not pretend they fully control every result. And if the role depends on collaboration, the plan should not create unnecessary conflict over credits. The goal is to make every plan honest. A good plan does not need to reward every task, and in fact, it should not. Too many measures can make the message unclear, but the plan should reward the few outcomes that best represent success in the role as it exists today. That phrase matters. As it exists today. The plan should not be designed around how the role worked when the company was smaller, or when the first plan was written, or when the business only cared about new customer acquisition. It should reflect the work people are actually doing now and the value the business now needs them to create. Customer success is a useful example of this. Many companies say customer success is strategic, but the role is often pulled in several directions. Some leaders see it mainly as renewal protection, while others expect expansion, adoption support, relationship management, escalation handling, product feedback, and internal coordination. All of that matter, but one role cannot carry every expectation equally. When the company does not decide what the role truly owns, the pay plan becomes noisy. It may include a little retention measure, a little expansion measure, a little customer satisfaction measure, while still expecting the person to handle many other responsibilities that do not fit neatly into the plan. The plan may look balanced on paper, but the person may experience it as confusion. That is why role clarity is not just human resource exercise. It is the foundation of compensation design. Before deciding how to pay a role, the company needs to understand what the role is being asked to carry and where the person truly creates value. The answer may involve closing, expanding, renewing, advising, enabling, managing, or protecting quality, but the role cannot carry everything with equal importance. When a role tries to be everything, the compensation plan either becomes too complicated or ends up rewarding only the easiest thing to measure. Neither outcome is good. A complicated plan becomes hard to understand and hard to trust, while a plan that rewards only what is easy to measure may ignore the work that makes the role valuable. The best compensation conversation often begin before anyone opens the spreadsheets. They begin with a simple question. What is this role supposed to do? Now change the conversation. It moves the discussion away from last year's plan towards the work the business actually needs. Once that is clear, the plan can be tested against the role. A role expected to create new demand should not be paid like a renewal role. A role expected to grow existing customers should not treat the first contract as the only important moment. A role expected to protect margin should not ignore profitability completely, and a role expected to collaborate should not make collaboration financially painful. The design does not have to be perfect, but it has to be honest. It has to reflect the role people are actually doing. This becomes even more important when companies go through change. A new strategy, a new product, a new region, a merger, a restructuring, or a shift from new customer acquisition to retention can all change the nature of sales work. Sometimes the change is obvious because a new team is created or a job title is changed. But more often, the change is subtle. The title stays the same while meetings, customer conversation, internal dependencies, and leadership expectations slowly change around it. If the pay plan does not follow, The company creates an old economic agreement around a new job. That is where credibility starts to break. People are usually willing to adapt when the business changes. Salespeople understand that market moves and customer change, but they want the plan to be honest about the new reality. They want to know whether the company recognizes the shifts, whether the new expectations are truly part of the role, and whether the reward system has been updated to match what leadership is asking for. This is where many planned launches fall short. A company announces a new strategy and then presents a plan that looks almost the same as last year's design. Leadership says the role is becoming more advisory, more strategic, more customer focused, or more collaborative, but the plan still rewards the old outcome in the old way. That creates a credibility gap. The seller may not say much in the meeting, but they hear the inconsistency. And later, when pressure comes, they follow the pay. This is why the job and the pay plan needs to be in the same conversation. Otherwise, the company may keep rewarding the role it used to need while asking people to deliver the role it needs. That affects behavior because people make choices based on what the plan rewards. It affects trust because people judge whether the company recognizes the work it is asking for. It affects costs because the business may keep paying for outcome that no longer represents the best value. It affects managers because they are asked to coach behaviors the plan does not support. And it affects strategy because roles are how strategy reaches the customer. A strategy does not reach the customer by saying it in a leadership document. It reaches the customer through what people do, through the seller's choice on a customer call, through the customer success manager's priorities after onboarding, through the sales manager's coaching in a pipeline review, through the technical specialties involvement in a complex deal, through the channel manager's work with partners. If the role is unclear, the strategy becomes unclear in practice. And if the compensation plan is still attached to an older version of the role, the strategy will struggle to land. Here is the signal for this episode. Take one sales role in your organization and compare what the job is supposed to do, what the manager actually expects, and what the compensation plan rewards. If those three things describe the same job, the role, and the plan are moving together. But if the job description says one thing, the manager expects another, and the compensation plan rewards something else, the issue is not only compensation. The role itself has drifted. And when the role has drifted, changing the rate will not solve the problem. You have to realign the job before you redesign the pay. Because sales compensation is not only about how much someone can earn, it is about what kind of work the company is asking them to do, what kind of value the company believes that work creates, and whether the reward system recognizes that value clearly enough. When the job changes but the pay does not, the company sends a confusing message. It asks people to become something new while rewarding them for being something old. And over time, people will choose the version of the role that the plan makes most worthwhile. Next episode, we will move from the foundation of sales compensation into the design itself. We will look at why a good plan should not start with the rates and why the best starting point is the behavior the business is trying to create. I am Abimbola, and this is Sales Comp Decoded, the stories behind how companies pay people to sell. If this episode made you think about a role that has quietly changed in your organization, share it with someone responsible for sales, reward, or commercial design. Now, when the job changes, the pay plan has to also change. Otherwise, the business may keep rewarding the role it used to need while asking people to deliver the role it needs now.